She was glowing, the kind of glow that comes when someone finally feels safe, seen, loved. 26-year-old Montana Davis had just posted photos with her new boyfriend. A few smiling selfies, a caption full of joy, comments poured in, heart emojis, encouragement, friends cheering her on. But hours later, that same woman, nurse, mother of two, was lying on her apartment floor, bleeding, struggling to breathe. A phone call to 911 had already been made. Her voice on that call wasn't panicked, it was urgent, focused. Like someone who knew danger when she saw it. She had ended her past relationship, she had moved on, she had started to heal. But the man she left behind wasn't ready to let go. And when he saw her happiness online, something snapped. This wasn't a random act. It wasn't a home invasion. It wasn't a burglary gone wrong. It was personal. One woman, two young daughters, one social media post, and a jealous ex watching from the sidelines. Have you ever seen a breakup go dangerously wrong? Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from, because this could happen anywhere. This is not just a story of jealousy. It's not just about violence. It's about what happens when moving on turns deadly. And the one thing Montana did just hours before being shot may have sealed her fate. And that's where everything changes. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from viewers around the world. Montana Davis was more than just a name in a headline. She was a 26-year-old woman from Dayton, Ohio, who had dedicated her life to caring for others. As a licensed nurse, she worked tirelessly to provide for her two young daughters, embodying the roles of both caregiver and provider with unwavering commitment. Her days were filled with the responsibilities of motherhood and the demands of her profession. Yet, she managed to balance these with grace, often seen with a smile that could light up a room. Friends and family described her as smart, successful, loving, and caring. A person who would go out of her way to help others, regardless of whether she knew them personally. Montana's mother, Melissa Dennis, shared heartfelt memories of their close bond. They had a tradition of going out for breakfast together after dropping the kids off at daycare and school. These moments were cherished, providing a glimpse into the deep connection they shared. Melissa recalled how Montana would call her at 6 o'clock in the morning, eager to spend time together. The loss of these simple yet profound moments has left an indelible void in her life. Beyond her professional and familial roles, Montana was a beacon of positivity in her community. Her social media posts often reflected her joyful spirit and love for her children. She celebrated milestones, shared uplifting messages, and radiated a sense of hope and resilience that resonated with many. However, beneath the surface of her vibrant life, Montana faced challenges. She had ended a relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Jamarte Brown, a decision that marked a turning point in her life. Determined to move forward, she embraced a new chapter, finding happiness in a new relationship. Her social media reflected this newfound joy, with posts that showcased her love and optimism. Tragically, this public display of happiness became a catalyst for a devastating event. On April 3, 2024, Montana made a 911 call, reporting that her ex-boyfriend was threatening her. She named Brown in the call, expressing fear for her safety. Shortly after, Brown arrived at her residence on Torrington Place, forcibly entered by kicking in the back door, and shot Montana multiple times. Despite immediate medical attention and being transported to Miami Valley Hospital, she succumbed to her injuries. The community was left in shock. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered for a balloon release to honor Montana's memory, sending hundreds of balloons into the sky as a symbol of their love and loss. Her death served as a stark reminder of the dangers that can arise from domestic disputes and the importance of taking threats seriously. Montana's story is a poignant example of a life full of promise cut short by senseless violence. It underscores the need for awareness and proactive measures to protect individuals from domestic threats. Her legacy lives on through her children, her family, and the countless lives she touched with her compassion and kindness. Montana Davis, a dedicated nurse and mother of two from Dayton, Ohio, once shared a relationship with Jamarte Latrell Brown. While specific details about the inception of their relationship remain sparse, it's evident that their bond eventually deteriorated, leading Montane to end the relationship. Following their separation, Montane began to rebuild her life, finding happiness in a new relationship. She shared moments of joy on social media, celebrating her renewed sense of hope and love. However, these public displays of happiness seemed to provoke Jamarte. After ending her relationship with Jamarte Brown, Montane Davis found herself on a journey of healing and rediscovery. As a dedicated nurse and mother of two, she focused on rebuilding her life, cherishing moments with her children, and embracing the support of her close-knit community in Dayton, Ohio. In time, Montana met someone new, a man who brought joy and stability into her life. Their relationship blossomed, filled with shared laughter, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of each other's pasts. For Montane, this new love represented a fresh start, a chance to move beyond the shadows of her previous relationship and into the light of a hopeful future. Embracing this newfound happiness, Montane shared glimpses of her relationship on social media. Photos of smiling faces, heartfelt captions, and moments of togetherness painted a picture of a woman reclaiming her joy. These posts resonated with many, garnering supportive comments and well wishes from friends and family who celebrated her happiness. However, not everyone viewed Montane's public declarations with joy. Her ex-boyfriend, Jamarte Brown, reportedly reacted with increasing hostility. According to reports, he began sending obsessive messages, expressing anger and jealousy over her new relationship. The situation escalated, culminating in a series of threatening communications that left Montane feeling unsafe. On April 3, 2024, Montane made a distressing 911 call, reporting that her ex-boyfriend was threatening her. She identified Jamarte Brown as the individual making threats against her safety. Tragically, shortly after this call, Jamarte forcibly entered her residence on Torrington Place by kicking in the back door and shot Montane multiple times. Despite being rushed to Miami Valley Hospital, she succumbed to her injuries. This devastating event underscores the potential dangers that can arise when individuals cannot accept the end of a relationship. Montane's story serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of taking threats seriously and the need for protective measures in situations involving domestic disputes. Have you ever seen social media fuel real-life jealousy? It began as a quiet morning in Dayton, Ohio, but by the time the sun rose, it would forever be marked as the day Montane Davis's life was tragically cut short. As a devoted nurse and mother of two, Montane had recently started rebuilding her life after a tumultuous breakup. She had found hope again in a new relationship, one that brought her happiness. However, the joy she had rediscovered would soon be shattered by her ex, Jamarte Brown, whose jealousy and obsessive behavior spiraled out of control in the darkest of ways. Montane made a distressing 911 call around 2:30 a.m. She told the dispatcher that she was being threatened by her ex-boyfriend, Jamarte. According to Montane, Jamarte had become increasingly aggressive and had been sending her a series of alarming messages. She feared for her safety. Montane's voice trembled as she relayed her concerns, but she remained clear-headed enough to provide key details. Jamarte was nearby, and she was terrified of what might happen next. Her desperate plea for help was heard, and law enforcement immediately responded, aware of the urgency in her voice. The officers who arrived at the scene knew there was a potential for danger, but what they couldn't know was how quickly the situation would escalate. As the police raced to Montane's home, Jamarte was already there. He had arrived around 2:49 a.m., having apparently kicked in the back door of the house in a fit of rage. He was armed with a firearm, determined to confront Montane and make her pay for moving on. The violent confrontation that followed was nothing short of tragic. In a matter of moments, Jamarte opened fire. Multiple shots rang out, shattering the quiet of the early morning and leaving Montane with devastating injuries. She was struck several times before Jamarte fled the scene, leaving behind a scene of horror. Her life was now hanging by a thread. The police, who had arrived only moments too late to prevent the shooting, rushed to Montane's side. They found her bleeding and unresponsive, but still clinging to life. Paramedics were called in immediately, and Montane was quickly transferred to Miami Valley Hospital, a mere few miles away from her home. She was in critical condition, but the hospital staff did everything they could to save her. Her family members, who had been notified of the situation, rushed to the hospital, hoping for a miracle. But despite the valiant efforts of the medical team, Montane could not survive the injuries inflicted by Jamarte. She passed away at Miami Valley Hospital, leaving behind her 2 young children and a community in shock. Her death was a devastating confirmation of the brutal reality of domestic violence gone too far. Montane's family and friends were left heartbroken and angry. They couldn't understand how someone who had once been part of her life could turn into a deadly threat. Her death, at the hands of a man she had once trusted, was a tragic reminder of the dangerous consequences of obsessive jealousy and a lack of boundaries. But as the police began their investigation, they uncovered something even more chilling: the extent of Jamarte's spiraling behavior. While he had attempted to flee the scene of the crime, law enforcement had already begun searching for him. A manhunt was launched almost immediately, with officers combing through the surrounding neighborhoods, hoping to catch Jamarte before he could evade capture. As police scoured the area around Dayton, Ohio, they were able to trace Jamarte's movements through a combination of eyewitness accounts, surveillance footage, and his known associates. By early afternoon on April 3, 2024, the authorities had narrowed down his possible location to a wooded area near a local park. Officers set up a perimeter and began a tactical search for the suspect, fully aware that Jamarte could be armed and dangerous after the violent events of the early morning. Around 4:30 p.m., police finally closed in on Jamarte. He was discovered hiding in dense brush near a secluded area just outside Dayton. When authorities apprehended him, he offered little resistance. It was clear that he understood the gravity of his situation. The officers took him into custody, placing him under arrest for the murder of Montane Davis. His expression was blank, but his fate was sealed. At the time of his arrest, Jamarte was charged with aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, and aggravated burglary. These charges reflected not just the death of Montane, but also the violent break-in at her home. Law enforcement was confident that Jamarte had intended to commit the crime with a degree of planning, making the murder especially heinous. The robbery charge stemmed from reports that items had been disturbed in the home during the attack, though no clear evidence of theft had emerged. The aggravated burglary charge, however, was particularly crucial, as it signified that Jamarte had entered Montane's residence with the intention of committing a violent crime. As Jamarte was transported to the Montgomery County Jail, the emotional fallout from his actions began to ripple through the community. Montane's family was left to pick up the pieces of their broken hearts. Her mother, father, and siblings could hardly fathom the brutal reality of losing a loved one in such a senseless act of violence. Montane had been a devoted mother and daughter, a woman with a bright future ahead of her. To lose her at the hands of someone she had once trusted was a devastation that her family saw. In the days following Jamarte's arrest, investigators uncovered a trail of behavior that painted a terrifying picture of a man who was unraveling before their eyes. Social media messages, text conversations, and even surveillance footage from the area near Montane's home revealed a pattern of increasing obsession. Jamarte had become fixated on Montane's every move, even watching her social media posts obsessively, tracking her every interaction with her new partner. His jealousy had consumed him, clouding his ability to think rationally. He could not accept that she had moved on. But perhaps the most unsettling revelation was the discovery of a message Jamarte had sent to a close friend just hours before the murder. In it, he confessed that he couldn't handle the idea of Montane being happy with someone else, and threatened that someone would pay the price. This message would serve as a chilling testament to how deeply his obsession had taken root. And as investigators pieced together the final moments leading to Montane's death, they realized that Jamarte's fixation on her had evolved into something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. He had not only destroyed Montane's life, but also condemned himself to a future behind bars. Montane's friends, too, were shaken to their core. They remembered her as someone full of life, someone who was always willing to help others, and who had a fierce determination to move forward and build a better future. She was not just a victim. She was a person who mattered deeply to so many people. Her tragic death left a void in the lives of those who loved her, and their grief quickly turned to outrage. The questions why and how echoed through the community. Social media became a platform for Montané's loved ones to express their sorrow, and soon memorials began to appear online. Pictures of Montané were shared, along with heartfelt messages about the kind of person she was. The hashtag Justice for Montané quickly gained traction, with people from across the country voicing their support for her family and demanding justice. Local organizations and activists rallied behind the cause, with some organizing memorials and vigils to honor Montané's life. The words, "We will not forget," became a rallying cry for those seeking accountability. The calls for justice were not just confined to online spaces. In the days following Jamarte's arrest, numerous news outlets covered the case. Local TV stations in Dayton reported on the tragedy, with many focusing on Montané's promising life and the senselessness of her death. Community leaders spoke out against domestic violence, calling for stronger protections for women, and urging everyone to pay attention to warning signs of dangerous relationships before it's too late. The court dates ahead were anticipated with growing tension. Montané's family had made it clear that they would not rest until Jamarte faced the full consequences of his actions. They vowed to attend every court hearing, every legal proceeding, standing strong for their beloved daughter and sister, whose life had been violently taken far too soon. The arrest of Jamarte Brown was only the beginning of the long legal process ahead. As Montané's family fought to cope with the aftermath of their devastating loss, they also had to navigate the complexities of the justice system. They would be present day after day as Jamarte faced his trial, never forgetting that their loved one's life was worth more than the violence that had taken it away. And while Jamarte would soon be forced to answer for his horrific actions, the true weight of the loss would always remain with those who knew and loved Montané. In the wake of the arrest and the media frenzy that followed, a memorial fund was established in Montané's honor. The fund would be used to support victims of domestic violence and to educate the public about the importance of early intervention in abusive relationships. Montané's legacy was already making an impact, and her family was determined to ensure that her story would lead to lasting change. Montané Davis's tragic death serves as a stark reminder of the intersection between our digital lives and real-world dangers. In an age where social media is a primary form of communication and connection, it's easy to forget that not every post or message is harmless. What can start as a public celebration of a new chapter, such as Montané's announcement of her new relationship, can quickly spiral into something far more sinister when obsessive behaviors are left unchecked. Jamarte Brown's relentless actions after that social media post illustrate how digital exposure can be a gateway for dangerous consequences.
Gathered minutes ago with a balloon release to honor her memory.
26-year-old Montané Davis was found shot on Torrington Place Wednesday. She died at the hospital a short time later. 2 News reporter Grace Hewitt is live in Dayton, where that event just happened. Grace, how are they remembering her tonight?
Yeah, just behind me is where Montané's family and friends remembering her. A lot of people showing up to show their support and love, bringing flowers, sharing memories with each other about Montané. Montané's family is remembering her as a smart, successful, loving, and caring person, someone who would do anything for anybody.
As seen in Montané's story, the digital world gave Jamarte a platform for his jealousy and obsessive behavior to fester. His reaction to Montané's new relationship wasn't just fueled by anger, it was consumed by a need to control, a need to reassert dominance over someone who had moved on. This kind of behavior doesn't start overnight. While some may consider jealousy to be a normal reaction to a breakup, it's important to recognize when such emotions cross the line into dangerous territory. What began as passive-aggressive comments and angry texts escalated rapidly, resulting in threats and ultimately violence. The truth is, many victims of abusive relationships experience signs of controlling behavior that are subtle at first. In Montané's case, Jamarte's attempts to monitor her social media and constant messages warning her not to move on were red flags that, in retrospect, pointed to an increasingly toxic and violent dynamic. Often, these behaviors are overlooked or dismissed, but the reality is that they are part of a broader pattern of control that can, and in some cases does, spiral out of control. Obsessive behavior such as stalking or constantly reaching out to a former partner can quickly transition from harmless to deadly. The unfortunate truth is that once a victim is targeted, escaping the cycle of harassment, intimidation, and threats is difficult. Social media, which is designed to connect us, has a darker side in abusive situations. Montané's public post about her new love was meant to celebrate her healing and the new chapter of her life. However, in Jamarte's eyes, it was an affront to his control, and he saw it as a betrayal that could not be tolerated. What started as a simple image or message turned into an obsession that left Montané no way to escape his wrath. He wasn't just looking at her online posts, he was using the information against her, hunting her down both digitally and physically. The ease with which abusers can track their victims through social media, whether through checking in locations, posts, or even mutual connections, makes these platforms particularly dangerous in the context of abusive relationships. Montané Davis's story is more than just a tragic headline. It's a life cut short, dreams unfulfilled, and a future that will never come to pass. She was a mother, a daughter, and a woman who had worked hard to heal, rebuild, and rediscover love after the chaos of a tumultuous relationship. Her smile in photos, the joy she shared with her children, and the hope she had for the life ahead of her serve as powerful reminders of the vibrant person she was. Montané was more than a victim. She was someone who had already experienced so much, but was determined to move forward. In the days and months leading up to her death, she had embraced a new relationship and was starting anew, ready to give and receive love in a way that had once seemed impossible. Her journey of rediscovery reflected the resilience of many who have endured abusive relationships. Yet in the shadows of this new beginning, a dangerous obsession was quietly building, one that would cost Montané everything. As we remember Montané's smile and her children, one haunting question lingers: could this have been prevented? It's a question that no one can answer, but it echoes with heartbreaking clarity. The signs were there, the red flags were visible, and yet the intervention needed to change the course of this tragedy never came in time. Montané did everything she could to protect herself. She reached out for help. She called the authorities. She tried to move on, but sometimes that's just not enough when the person causing harm refuses to let go. We live in a society where the prevalence of domestic violence, controlling behavior, and obsessive relationships is often underestimated or overlooked until it's too late. Montané's story reveals just how dangerous it can be to ignore or dismiss the signs of manipulation, jealousy, and emotional abuse. When a person threatens harm, it's easy for some to think it's an empty threat or just an emotional outburst. But as this case shows, words can turn into actions in the blink of an eye. The pain of losing Montané is felt not only by her family and friends, but by all who knew the power of her spirit, her joy, and her potential. Her death leaves behind a void that can never be filled. Her children will grow up without their mother, and the community will forever remember the woman who had so much more to give. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that her passing could have been prevented if only the situation had been taken more seriously. If only the repeated threats and obsessive behaviors had been addressed sooner. The escalation of threats leading up to the fatal night was not an isolated incident. Montané reached out for help when she was in danger. She made that 911 call at 2:40 a.m., desperately reporting Jamarte's threats. And yet, the authorities arrived too late. Her call for help, however desperate, didn't prevent the violence. This tragic oversight highlights an urgent need for better systems of protection, especially when a victim has the courage to speak out. The warning signs of abusive relationships are often visible to friends and family, but it's essential that those around the victim understand the gravity of the situation. Obsessive behavior and controlling actions can manifest in various forms. Constant surveillance of a partner's movements, controlling how they spend their time or whom they interact with, and even threatening harm if they do not comply. In Montane's case, her ex-boyfriend's threats were directed at her new relationship, a clear indication that Jamarte was unable or unwilling to respect her autonomy. It's crucial for loved ones to recognize these behaviors and intervene before it's too late. The reality is that many victims of domestic violence don't feel safe enough to reach out. Some fear that they won't be believed, while others worry about the repercussions of speaking up. Domestic violence doesn't only happen behind closed doors. Sometimes it plays out in public, online spaces, or through texts and phone calls. This is why it is vital for those who are close to someone in an abusive relationship to stay vigilant and supportive, even when there may not be visible signs of abuse. Montane's case proves that when someone reaches out for help, it is essential that we listen and take action. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, it's important to remember that you are not alone. Help is available, and there are resources and hotlines that can offer support. As we reflect on the tragic loss of Montane Davis, let us not just remember her for the pain that was inflicted on her, but for the lessons her story can teach us. We must take threats seriously, recognize the signs of manipulation, and stand with those who need us. Do you think more should be done when someone reports threats like this? Share your thoughts below. And if you're in an unsafe situation, don't hesitate to reach out for help. Your safety matters, and there is always someone ready to listen.